Okay, so I told you guys that I would try and give you some tips and tricks on how I memorize, especially when it's short notice like this. This is the script for the one act, which I'm putting up next week, but I have to be off book by tomorrow. Now, yesterday I didn't really try and commit anything to memory. I just familiarized myself with the script, with the storyline. It really helps to know where your character is headed, to the point where you could, if you needed to, paraphrase it if you were trying to tell the story to someone else and you needed to make it shorter. So the first thing you do, pretty basic, go through and highlight, obviously, highlight all of your lines. Things to not highlight. Don't highlight your character name. I wouldn't highlight stage direction that directly involves you. Like right here, this is all action for me. I'm going back through now and piecing my video together, and I'm starting to realize that I didn't really explain that very well. So let me try again. Basically, the reason you don't highlight your stage directions is because the general consensus is that stage direction doesn't necessarily represent what the playwright wanted. It represents what choices that very first cast made in that moment. So when I have stage directions that tell me to lean against the bookcase, whatever, the only reason they're in there is because those are the choices that original actor made for that role right out of the gate. Now, that doesn't mean that those aren't cool choices. It just means that maybe you should use them as a jumping off point. Try not to get an idea in your head of what you want the scene to look like or play as or whatever when you're just starting out, because you don't really know where that's going to take you. Hopefully you're working off of your partner to the extent that you won't know where you're going to be coming from at any given moment. Our acting teacher always, kind of as a joke, uses the phrase "I love you" as an example, because you can say "I love you" in a very hateful and hurtful manner. It doesn't have to be sweet. And that's kind of where the stage direction thing comes from as well. You don't have to scream "I hate you" for the words to be effective. And that's why we try not to pay too much attention to those stage directions that, you see in brackets screaming or crying or laughing or whatever. Pass right over those and do your own homework. Work with yourself, work with your partner, and you will have a much better outcome in the long run. Step 2 actually is more from the specific technique that I study, which I study the Meisner technique. Remove all punctuation and everybody else's dialogue. So it's just your lines written in one block of text, no periods, no commas, no anything, and it ends up looking like this. And that's my entire play. That is my entire one-act, 10-page play, just my lines. The idea is that you can then do this by rote, and it's always going to come from an organic place, because it's just like in everyday life. You don't really, sometimes we think about what we say. 99% of the time, we do not think about what we're about to say. The goal of this is to allow you the space to find each individual thought or beat, or however you want to classify it, in a very natural way, just like you would in conversation. So it allows you to be affected by what somebody else is saying, because you're not sitting up here stressing out over what's my next line, I should probably give you an example of what I mean when I say memorizing it by rote. It is a speed through monologue. What about this stuff, Jerry? Bills, gas, phone, what do you want to pay them for? They do, shut off if you do, and don't. Letters, Jerry dares die. Whoops, the plaintiff's conduct yourself, truth, faithful wife, defendant, said defendant who's guilty of acts of cruelty towards the plaintiff, destroying peace of mind, and plaintiffs on the objects of matrimony is hereby ordered decreed. Why didn't you tell me, Jerry? You didn't want me to know. Yeah, you can only tell her about me. My God, even when you divorce her, it's a secret to have with her. One of these days you're going to marry me, she'll know, and I won't. So the steps that I take to get to that point where I can just say it like a machine starts with real legit just memorization, and that's the fun part. So how do you memorize, Gina? I'll tell you. I am a very visual person. Some people have things that work. They do like flashcards or color-coded cards. I've heard that people can just read the whole thing over and over and over and over, and they can memorize it. Because I am visual, however, I do deal in shapes. So maybe you're like me. I don't actually memorize the words as much as I memorize the shape that they take on the page. A good example of this actually would be my monologue page or any page like this. So I've got a few more lines on here, right? The lines all have their own shape. Well, that's actually what my brain memorizes way before it memorizes the words. So I break down my script monologue, this chunk, in the exact same way. I'll pick a piece that's sizable, but make sure that it's not stopping on a period. Make sure it's not stopping at the end of a thought, because if you do that, that's going to be the place you get stuck with this particular technique. This is a good example, actually. There's a lot of time in the very beginning of my scene where I get cut off or I trail off. So this as a sentence is, this is crazy, holy shit, who are you? What are you doing here? I've had way too much, I shouldn't be here, yes, I shouldn't, yeah, I, chocolate and peanuts, I love you, I'm nothing, yeah, well. So none of that makes sense, and those are all those tiny little interjections that are so easy to forget, and they're so easy to go up on when you're on stage. So I'm going to memorize everything by rote. First, I'm going to take my highlighter and I'm going to draw a shape of the dialogue. All right, so this is the next step. I've drawn a recognizable shape using the highlighter. It's more or less a rectangle with a broken end right here. And I did that because I stopped it at an and. So I didn't end it at a sentence. I end it on a conjunction, just so I have to immediately know that there's something coming up next. So I should never, ever, ever, ever go up, because this and is going to be burned into my brain. I'm going to memorize from here to here. And then once I can do this at the same speed as I did that example that I showed you guys just a few seconds ago, I'm going to move on and I'm going to make another shape with a different colored highlighter. So I'm going to use the yellow highlighter for the next one. Go through and essentially make a shape. It's very arbitrary, like it's going to end over here at like 5 every, because again, every is not going to be the end of the sentence. One thing that I do all the time, I use an old school trick. I eat, and they say that you can use chewing gum. I use popcorn. The act of chewing has actually been scientifically proven. Actually helps you retain 30 to 35% more information, especially in regards to delayed word recall, which obviously that's what we're doing. So I do popcorn, you can do chewing gum. I don't recommend, obviously, super fatty things, because hopefully you're gonna be working a lot, which means you're gonna be memorizing a lot. So yeah, it is 5:50 and I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and I'll check back in. That way you can see how quick it works, this technique, and see if you can apply it yourself. Okay, so it is 8:05 and I'm about to do my first attempt at a full run through from memory. So if you're keeping track, it's been just over 2 hours. It's sweet. So it's fully memorized now. I'll say it like probably 2 or 3 more times tonight. The same way, just checking on myself when I feel shaky on something, just until I'm really solid. And then I will put it away for the night. Probably chill with some Netflix, maybe go find some food, and then go to bed and wake up, and the first thing I'm going to do in the morning is just go over my memorization. So that's how I memorize, and as you can see from me, it works pretty darn well. I hope that helped you guys.